Hi boys and girls. So today I'm going to go over time to, it says we want to do quarter past time first and then we'll do quarter to time. I'm going to do them both in this video, but real quick, let's just review. So first we were talking about time to the hour. So let me draw my clock. And I want you to, if you're watching right now, tell your parents or whoever's watching with you, where does our big hand or our minute hand point when the time is to the hour? Where does it point when the time is to the hour? Think about it if you need to and let somebody know. Okay. So, I hope you all said that when time is to the hour, the big hand or the minute hand points to the 12. So when it's to the hour, when it's right on the hour, our big hand or our minute hand is always going to point straight up at the 12. So then let's draw an hour hand. And then I want you guys to tell whoever you're watching with, or even just say it quietly to yourself, if you're not watching with anybody, what time this clock is showing. We know that my minute hand is pointing to the 12, so we know it's on the hour. And then take a look at where that short hand or that hour hand is pointing. And then tell whoever you're with or yourself, whatever you got going on, what time it is. That hour hand, that short hand, is pointing to the 8, which means this clock is showing us 8 o'clock because our long hand, our minute hand, is pointing straight up at that 12, and our hour hand is pointing to the 8. Whenever our minute hand, our long hand is pointing at the 12, it's always, always, always time to the hour, and then you just have to look at the shorter hand or the hour hand to tell you what hour it is. So if it was pointing at the 9, it would be 9 o'clock, 10 would be 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, so on and so forth. Now, while I'm erasing and fixing, I want you to answer this question to whoever you are with. When time is to the half hour, where is your minute hand or your longer hand pointing? We know the hour points to the 12. Where does the half hour point? I hope you all said to the 6th. Whenever time is to the half hour, our minute hand or our long hand is pointing straight at that 6. So now let me draw my hour hand. And I want you guys to try and figure out what time the hour hand is showing. Go ahead and take a look at that. I'm trying to avoid the glare from my window. Take a look at that and try to figure out what time. We know it's something to the half hour. It's something 30. But take a look at that hour hand and see what two numbers it's in between. And then which one tells us what time it is. Ooh, it just started raining. So on this clock, my shorthand, my hour hand is right in between my 1 and my 2. But we talked about that as time moves, this hand goes this way. So since this hand would be moving this way, it has not hit the 2 yet. But it's already past the 1, which means this clock is showing us 1:30. That can be a little bit confusing, that part, that, figuring out what hour it is with the hour hand being in between two numbers. So if you have questions about that, feel free to email me, or I can go on live on Zoom with you and we can talk about it. Okay, so now we're talking about quarter past time, which means, so we talked about hour time. Hour time is pointing straight up. We talked about half hour time, which is when you are halfway through an hour, right? Because an hour is 60 minutes, halfway through would be 30 minutes. So in an hour, there are 2 half hours. And now we're going to talk about quarter time, which is going to be right in between that 12 and that 6, right in between the hour and the half hour. So we know it's quarter past. We're going to talk about quarter past time and quarter to time. When it's quarter past time, meaning a quarter is 15 minutes of an hour. There are 4 15-minute times, so a quarter is 15 minutes. So whenever it's quarter past an hour, that means it's 15 minutes past the hour. So this, remember we said each space or each number represents 5, so it goes 5, 10, 15. We are 15 minutes past the hour. Moved 15 minutes. Remember, because we talked about this is 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. So this time is going to show something 15. So let's take a look at that first clock on that page. Let me fix this 4 really quick. The first clock on that page has the hand on the 3. The minute hand is on the 3 on the first clock on our quarter past time. So that means we are going to color that clock in because it is pointing to the 3. And then our minute hand, or excuse me, our hour hand, our shorthand, I kind of messed that up, is pointing this way. I'm going to draw my dotted line so we can see what 2 numbers it's in between. So this is the time that you see on that first clock. We have our minute hand, our long hand, pointing to the 3, which means it is a quarter past, or quarter past means 15 minutes past. So we are 15 minutes past the hour. So what 2 numbers are we in between? 4 and 5. So since we talked about how our hour hand moves this way, that means we haven't hit the 5, we haven't hit the 5 yet, so it's still 4. So the time this clock shows is 4:15 because we're in between the 4 and the 5, and our minute hand is on the 3, which means it is something 15. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one I see that minute hand, I'm not going to draw it, we're just going to talk about it. I see that minute hand is pointing straight up at the 12, which means that it's time to the what? Think about that. Answer that question. We talked about how time to the half hour, the minute hand points at the 6. Time, quarter past time, the minute hand is on the 3. When is the minute hand on the 12? When it's time to the hour. So I know that that clock is not showing me quarter past time. It's showing me time to the hour. I see that the hour hand is pointing to the 10, so that clock is showing me 10 o'clock. So we don't need to color that one in. We don't need to do anything with that one. The next one, the third picture on that page, I see my minute hand pointing at that 3. So we are going to color this one in. You can go ahead and color it in while I am drawing it on my board here. I see my minute hand pointing to the 3, and I see that my hour hand is pointing up here. My hour hand or my shorter hand. And I'm going to draw my dotted lines so we can see exactly where it is pointing. Okay, so I have my minute hand or my long hand pointing at the 3. So I know that it's quarter past time. It is 15 minutes past the hour. So if this minute hand was pointing up here at the 12, it would be something to the hour. So let's look. My dotted line or my hour hand is in between my 11 and my 12. We know that the clock moves this way, so I haven't hit the 12 yet, so it's still 11:15. Now, this arrow also goes this way. So if this arrow was still up here, that would mean it was 11 o'clock. If it had moved down to here, that would mean it was 11:30. And then our next one, I see that the arrow is pointing at that 9, which we are going to talk about in just a minute here. So we don't need to color that one in because an arrow pointing at a 9 is not quarter past time. That's what's known as quarter to time, which I will talk about in just a second here. So those last three, it wants you to draw 8:15, 6:15, and 1:15. I want you to go ahead and do that on your own, and then I will review it in my next video. Okay, so now we're going to talk about quarter to time. So quarter past time, our minute hand or our big hand is always on the 3. Quarter to time, our minute hand or our big hand is always on the 9. So let me draw you an example. Let me draw you an example. Whoops, I made that kind of close. Hang on. So I have my minute hand or my big hand pointing to that 9. And then I will put my hour hand over here. And I'll draw my dotted line so you guys can see. Okay, so when my hour hand, or excuse me, when my minute hand, my big hand is pointing to the 9, that means it's something 45. It is a quarter to the hour, meaning in 15 minutes, it will be a new hour. So right now, my minute hand, or excuse me, my hour hand is between the 1 and the 2, which means this clock is showing us 1:45 because the clock has not hit 2 yet, but it's past 1. So this clock is showing 1:45. But quarter to time means that in 15 minutes, my hour hand will be, or my minute hand will be back on the 12, which means it'll be time to the hour, and this hour hand will then hit the 2. So 1:45 means that in 15 minutes, it will be 2 o'clock. So let's take a look at what they've given us here. I'm not going to draw the first one, but let's talk about it. The first one, I see that my minute hand or my long hand is pointing up at that 12, which means it is time to the what? Hour. It is time to the hour. I see my minute hand pointing at the 12 and my hour hand pointing at the 1, which means it is 1 o'clock there. So since my minute hand or my long hand isn't pointing at the 9, we don't need to color that one in. The next one, I see my minute hand pointing at the 9, so go ahead and color this one, circle this one, whatever you're doing, while I draw it for us. And my hour hand is over here. I'll draw my dotted line so that we can see. So I have my minute hand, my long hand pointing at the 9, which means it is something 45. And then my hour hand is in between the 7 and the 8. Has it reached the 8 yet? Nope, it has not, but it's gone past the 7, which means this clock is showing us 7:45. But that does mean that when this arrow, or when this hand, my minute hand, gets up to the 12 in 15 minutes, 5, 10, 15 minutes, this hand will then hit the 8, and then it will be 8 o'clock. I see that my next one is also pointing to the 9, my minute hand is, so go ahead, color it in. I'm going to try to erase all these little marks I just made. And my hour hand is pointing this way. So my minute hand is on the 9, which means that it is something 45, and my hour hand is right in between that 1 and that 2, which tells me that it has not hit the 2 yet, but it's past the 1, which tells you this clock is showing us 1:45, and in 15 minutes, it will be 2 o'clock, because this hand in 15 minutes will move there, and this hand in 15 minutes will move there. So it'll be pointing at the 2, the hour hand will be pointing at the 2, and the minute hand will be pointing at the 12 in 15 minutes. So let's review that really quick. So you're going to draw 11:45, 3:45, and 2:45 on the bottom there. And like I said, I will review those at the beginning of my next video before we get into writing the time. But let's take a look at this. Let's review. If time is to the hour, where does my minute hand point? At the 12. So time to the hour, that long hand is always going to be up at the 12. Right? I tried to draw a little clock. Time to the half hour, where does my minute hand point? To the 6. If the time is half hour, my minute hand or my long hand is always going to be pointing straight down at that 6. Quarter past, these ones can be confusing. But my quarter past time, my minute hand will point to the 3. And quarter to time, my minute hand will point to the 9. So those are the really important, all the numbers on a clock are important and tell you something, but these are the really important times. Hour, half hour, quarter past, and quarter to. Those are the really important times that you want to remember. So that way when you look at a clock, if you see that the hand is pointing, the big hand is pointing at the 12, you know that it's something to the hour. If it's pointing at the 6, you know it's something to the half hour. The 3, you know it's 15 minutes past the hour or a quarter past the hour. And to the 9, you know that it's 15 minutes to the next hour or a quarter to the next hour. So I know time can be confusing, and it's even harder to teach it remotely than it is to teach it in person. So if you have any questions or you are confused about that, please, please, please let me know, and I will try to clarify through Zoom or through FaceTime or whatever's easiest for you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.